They don't belong to us. They're other people. We just subscribe to them.
What does that mean?
And well, it's as simple as that. Everything you believe as Kaio, everything that you know, your expressions, to a great extent, don't belong to you at all. You never thought of them, but they were handed to you. Just their secondhand theology. You picked it up from someone. It's the same concept about mirror phase. A big part about mirror phase is it's a thing that children don't know who they are. They think they experience who they are through the eyes of someone else. So you get this kid who someone's constantly telling, oh, you're going to be such a heartbreaker, you're going to be such a schmodel, oh my gosh, what a beauty. And people are just constantly telling this little girl that she's this beauty thing. And eventually that like she pours all of her effort into becoming, really pretty. She learns how to do makeup really well. She does all these things. And that kid didn't have superhuman genes, but she was constantly being told. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like the kid who's always told he's going to become a dentist, and then this kid convinces himself he wants to be a dentist. It's mirror phase. That children want to be like, and it's the same with us and our ideologies. Our ideologies never belong to us. Even the fact that I was shitty in sport was something that was always just kind of like. My mom always told me I was creative, and I always drew, and I always like, you know what I mean? My mom was telling me that I can sing so well and all these things. I probably couldn't sing well, and this is something you told me back in the day. I think this is one of the very first conflicts. We sat somewhere, like you were playing guitar, and I was like, and you were telling me about how your music is kind of in your home quite often, like your dad does music or your grandfather, and you know what I mean? Like you were telling me like how. And I made the statement where I said like, oh, it's so unfair, like, there's no music in my family and it's so shitty, and now I've got no talent, you're born with it. And you were like, no dude, don't take away the fact that I've put in just way more hours of work than you did. You just haven't practiced. That's why you can't sing. You can't sing because you weren't born with the ability to. You just can't sing because you never practiced to, whereas I have.
It's deep shit.
And that speaks, but that speaks to the concept of mirror phase. Mirror phase is this whole idea that you become kind of what your surroundings, like, not dictate, but it speaks a big part into your being. So yeah, I think even when it comes to like the potential of having this really good life, and our ideologies kind of just you need to recognize what doesn't belong to you anymore. And stuff like me always thinking that I'm going to live a shitty life and always struggle with money, or always do this or do that, or always be unhappy in whatever job I am, like that's something. It's a mirror thing that belongs to my mom, and I'm not going to do it.
Isn't that crazy, right? Because what's the Christian word for that? What's the Christian term for that? Generational sin?
Generational, yeah. So there's merit to it. 100%. There is merit to stuff like bloodline, like generational curses. It makes it, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I think that's a great deal of what the Bible is actually. Just it's like, it's not as mystic as you think it is. It's actually quite practical.
But how crazy that, like, something like that, right? Something like the thought that just the reality in which your parents were born and lived, and then like whatever they wanted for it, like good or bad, right? Like whatever they wanted for your future, whatever they wanted for your life, they kind of projected that onto you, and then in a way, you feel like this internal obligation to meet that desire that they have for you. And so most people go through their entire lifetimes living out this dream and this fantasy that was never theirs to begin with, and they reach, I don't know, like 50 years old, and they're like, what is this all about? Like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Who am I?
It's hilarious that the funniest human tropes stem out of very real things that we don't like to agree on. For instance, one of the most famous of human tropes is the midlife crisis. But the midlife crisis comes out of exactly what you're speaking of. that's the midlife crisis. That's the concept of the midlife crisis. It's somebody getting to the point where they're just like, oh, I never want to do any of this. I just knocked you, Adam.
Hit him hard and fast.
He's not responding because he's doing something else. He's not responding because
No, hold on, Nick. I'm listening. Just give me 1 second. That's crazy, right? Because I think that is exactly what a midlife crisis is, but nobody really tells you, like nobody warns you that this is what it is or this is what's going to happen when you're in your 20s, like when you're old enough to do something about it. It's this weird thing that everybody suffers from. What's that?
No, I'm just saying, like historically, nobody warned us about these things, even though people like Heidegger wrote his entire thesis and philosophy on it, and we're just like no one tells you. Like, the information is literally there. Like, people did the actual science, or the philosophy about it, but nobody will tell you because nobody wants to.
But how crazy, dude? Like, what does that say about the human condition that we understand what causes these deep emotional rifts of depression and generational
close to your location.
But nobody wants to address what they are and do anything to fix it. Like, why we go through school, we go through down and tell you, hey, by the way, have you ever stopped to think for yourself, like, what it is you want and who it is you are? Because you're about to commit the rest of your life and potentially go into some serious debt to chase something that you really don't want to be chasing. But instead, nobody has that conversation, and I don't understand why. Because I think as a society, we would be so much better for it.
I 100% agree with you. I think and when it comes to even with the education system, I think there's a serious misalignment of what's important. Like, because we put a lot of effort into teaching a student, like a kid, something like biology or maths or whatever it is. I mean, basic foundational things which I think are important. Hey, there's a chest over where I am, by the way.
Hold on, I'm just taking out this guy.
I get that those are important foundational things and whatever, but we never go through the more intense things. I think.
Oh shit! I'm down.
I'm coming. Do we teach young people how to deal with trauma? Because I think that might be an important lesson teaching. I think spending time in, like, teaching young people, like, what is trauma, or teaching young people more about sexual, about being sexual beings. That's important. I do think there's a whole lot that we kind of need to realign as a group of people, as a body of people when it comes to education.
Where do you think the gap is? Like, what is the distance from what we're talking about being a reality, right? Like, actually making an effective education system that actually prepares people for, the journey that is the life ahead of them, and where we are now, where, like, the only thing I remember at all is the Pythagorean theorem, like a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's it. That's all I know.
Okay. I think the first step would be to recognize that up until now we've made a mistake.
So what was it? Repeat that.
I think that one of the most effective things we can do is to realize that up until now our methods have been it's been a mistake. We've kind of failed.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about it now. The school system has not changed all that much since our parents were in school. They still do math. They still do this. They still do that. They do very basic science. They do very basic like sex ed. They do very basic.
Yeah.
They do zero trauma counseling unless there's been a school shooting. I mean, unfortunately in the States that quite happens a lot. So that's a bad joke. But my point is just obscene like misalignment. But our first step would be to recognize that I think that the private school system
Please
does it
step
better.
inside and take the elevator down.
In the sense of like, I think there's a whole lot of like you get these like homeschool people, and then like where they kind of go about it differently. They help the child focus on what they like to do.
The automated systems are recognizing
you know what I mean? But
please
I
proceed
think
to the activation area down
that
below.
type of schooling, when it comes to truly nurturing the individuality of a child, while still instilling like great teachings and philosophies and backbone and morals, that's something that goes lacking for the general public. I think that especially lower income schools where the teachers are tired and they're being underpaid. You can't expect that. You can't expect an underpaid
main terminal so we can
teacher
begin.
working with kids who are tired because they didn't eat yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many factors in play when it comes to impoverished areas and why people are just harder to work with. You know what I mean?
Well, and also how crazy that, like talking about the education system and how archaic it is, right? Like, why are we still making kids, when they're in the prime developmental years of their life, wake up at crazy early in the morning, like 5 in the morning sometimes, be bused to this building when they're not even awake, expect them to pay attention, learn, and retain, come home, do these massive amounts of homeworks and projects and things that they're really not retaining information, they're just repeating it.
Yeah.
Like, how do we expect? That's not educating. That's indoctrinating, and it's like it's creating this, like, I don't know, this perpetual slavery. You just grind your whole life.
I think in a lot of so I don't know if you know this, but Finland changed that quite a bit in the best way. Where Finland does something like they do 2 or 3 hours of school per day, and then they do it only for like 4 days. They don't do homework. They don't because of exactly what you just said. Because of that, the children aren't giving you their best. The kids, in fact, they're doing quite shitty. Like these kids, they're not responding well. They're getting sleepier. They're getting it is just indoctrination. And then we tell these kids that they're doing bad at their tests. They can't even remember being awake in the classroom. And I'm like, I get it. I wasn't awake in my classroom.
Yeah, and then also when they start to freaking snap because we pump them full of drugs, right? We pump them full of Ritalin and Adderall and categorize some of these things as ADD or ADHD or whatever. And so now we have these kids that are malnourished and not rested and now chock full of drugs.
And they're not even, the funny thing is, and the request is for them to respond abnormally. We're pumping them for drugs because we need them to respond in an abnormal manner, which to me is that's crazy.
Flesh that out. What do you mean by that? Because I think I agree with you.
So, for instance, we assume that the standard child.
I'm down, by the way.
We assume that the standard or the basic 13-year-old can survive and flourish by doing, waking up 5 a.m. and then doing an 11-hour day because this kid still has after-school activities, and then do that 5 days a week, and then by the time the weekend comes around, he has one day off. There's also so many pressures.
Heads up.
And then,
Hacker
so
inbound.
now you have a child, a human being, who naturally, a kid can't do that.